Hi, it's Dr. Bob again, and today we are at the Palmdale Aircraft Museum. Got a great discussion today. We're going to talk a little bit about design. I'm surrounded by all of these wonderful, wonderful planes. Everything from a 747, this was the one that was used to haul the space shuttle when it had to move from Florida to Edwards Air Force Base or down to Southern California to the airport down there. When they couldn't land it at what the airport that they wanted it at, they'd have to truck it around on that 747, an F-16, an A-7. So all these great, great planes in American aircraft history. It's interesting because if you were to look at the list of materials that goes into making these planes, by and large, they're going to be pretty much the same. You're going to see aluminum and titanium, steel, electrical wiring. You're going to see all of these materials on the list. But these planes look completely different. What makes them different? The plans that they're built to. Actually, after I spent my time in the Navy as a nuclear engineer, and I got out and I came back here actually to Palmdale, California, and I worked on the B-1, and I was responsible for inspection. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time on was looking at those drawings, at those design plans, and ensuring that the planes were built according to the plans. What does that have to do with us, and particularly with creation and biblical truth? Well, if we look at the stories that are being told by many of the mainstream non-God believing scientists, you will see them talk about the similarity between organisms. They'll talk about how humans, we are, depending on who you're talking to, between 93 and 99%, sometimes we'll even throw around that number, similar to chimpanzees or the great apes. Is that indicative of our actual relationship to them? That's the question. When we look at these planes, you'll notice that they have some similarities, of course, because all of them fly in the same atmosphere. All of them are built on the same planet. We have the same raw materials that are being used to create them. And so because they operate in the same environment and they're built with the same materials, you would expect to see that their list of materials would be pretty similar, and it is. When you look at humans and other creatures of God's creation, you'll notice some very similar characteristics because they all are built with the same stuff. God said that we were built from the dust of the ground, right? We're built with the same stuff, and we are built to operate in the same environment. So when we look at our DNA, you have to realize that our DNA is the code of instructions that God has built into us that describe how to make the materials that make us up. And so when we look at a chimpanzee or an ape or anything, you would expect, because they operate in the same environment, built with the same materials, that they're going to have very, very similar DNA in the parts that encode for the materials that they're made of. Where we're going to see the difference is how are they being told to be built? What is the plan that they are built to? Now, just like when we look at these aircraft, we're looking at a set of blueprints that define how that plane should be built. Within our DNA, God actually encoded something very similar. A set of genes that are often called the Hox genes, it's H-O-X, Hox genes, and the Hox genes tell not only how to build things, but more specifically in what order and in what relationship to each other. So we see these Hox genes being utilized by our Creator to tell that code, that list of materials, how to go about building a human, or building a giraffe, or build an elephant. Just like when you show up at the flight line, or the assembly line, you're going to build one of these planes, you're going to have a list of materials, but you're also going to have instructions on how to go about putting that plane together. So these Hox genes are what make us different. And there we see the dissimilarities. So in fact, you could have an organism that by just simply looking at its DNA makeup was 99% plus the same as another organism, and yet because those instructions are different, you would end up with a very, very different organism. Another characteristic that is important for us to recognize, and it's not just true in biology or in creation, but it's true in all the things that we look at when we're looking at biblical truth, is that truth is a very common principle. Truth should seem very familiar. Fiction is what is unique. So when we look at these things and we say, okay, well, we see that pattern exhibited here and how we're building these. If we see it when we're building buildings, you know, if you look at the list of materials, of course, the list of materials looks very similar, whether you're building an office building or you're building a home. What's different is the plans, and how big a part of the entire project is that little stack of paper that tells you how to go about building that building, or in this case, building these planes. So we can look at it, we can realize that God didn't have to create each organism to be so dramatically unique in their biology. If they were going to operate in the same environment, they're going to be built with the same materials. The thing that makes humans unique is that we are the only creature that he says was built in his image. So while we may be made out of the same materials, and while we may operate in the same environment, what makes us unique is we are built in the image of God. So anytime you're looking at yourself in the mirror, just say, I am built in the image of my Creator. Now what does that mean? That means that this same intellect, the same opportunities, the same decisions, the same kind, all of those things that go into making us human are given to us from God. We're the only ones that have this ability to choose and to define ourselves and the choices that we will make and who we will be and whose we will be. So being made in the image of God gives us the opportunity to be like Him in the fact that we can choose to follow our Creator. Thanks, and we'll see you again. This is Dr. Bob again from Palmdale Airport.